Good morning. Yeah, you just caught me reaching up and doing something with my glasses. Finishing the last of my water. Yeah, I've been out this morning. I've already had breakfast. I have things I have to do today. Among them will be writing. I do need to get a recap out, which I've been sitting on for a few days now. A lot of things I need to get done. Yeah. Today is not going to be sort of a lighthearted poke at me and my writing styles and things that are going on. Even though I have my new roller derby girl t-shirt on. I wore this out. Yes, it's our new roller derby team t-shirt. And I have a tank top too that I wore to practice the other night. I thought I'd talk about something serious, and this is liable to get way serious because I'm going to talk about something that I don't normally talk about. And a lot of it has to do, if you follow the news, if you're on Facebook, you know, or you may be aware that the lead singer for Linkin Park, Chester Bennington, committed suicide this last week. And he did it on the birthday of Chris Cornell, who is the lead singer for Soundgarden, who also committed suicide back in May. Artists, it's not unusual for them to suffer the pangs of depression. It's a fairly common thing, actually. It's been shown that people who have a creative ability tend to also suffer from depression. And at times that depression can lead to suicidal ideation or even suicide. One of the things that dismayed me, now I didn't know much about Linkin Park. I'm not a listener. So I can't say too much about the whole incident, about how it affected me. Anytime someone kills themselves, I kind of get this weird feeling because, as I've probably mentioned a few times, I have attempted suicide. So it's something that I have a little knowledge of. But what really dismayed me is that several people who I'm friends with on Facebook I read some of their comments about what happened with Chester. And their attitude was sort of like, I don't understand why these people do this. Yeah, everybody has a bad day. Just suck it up. Just deal with it. And the other thing that also came out was the old standby of these people are so selfish. They don't realize what they're doing to the people they leave behind. It's a form of shaming. It's a form of shaming people who have died, who have killed themselves. Basically because you can't understand why they did it. So, you know, just like we have fat shaming and we have slut shaming, you have suicide shaming. You are basically shaming people who have mental illness. You're basically telling them, get over it. And that's something that I have experienced. Coming from the Midwest, and I know some of you live in the Midwest, coming from the Midwest, that's one of the old great standbys. If you're having a bad day, just get over it. Just suck it up and get over it. My first therapist, who I actually was sent to because I was getting suicidal back in 2008. In fact, she encouraged me to check myself into a facility. And I did. I spent 48 hours in a mental health facility in early 2008 due to the fact that I was kind of worried about taking that last step. And I was able to get on medication after that. I was taking like 4 different types of medication at one time, which I had to stop because it just got to be too expensive. I was paying for it out of my own pocket after I lost my job. Needless to say, I was taking about 500 milligrams of different drugs to stay stable. But one of the things she told me is that she always hated this Midwestern ethos of just tough it out and things will get better. Don't worry. Just tough it out. Just suck it up. Just move on, put it behind you, and keep going forward. You know, being depressed is not the same as having a bad day. I've had bad days. I have gotten speeding tickets. I have been in fights. I have been fired from jobs. I was once out of work for 3 years. I failed at interviews. I've screwed up work. I've had people, flat out tell me to my face that I'm worthless. I've had a couple of death threats online. I've gone through and am going through a divorce. None of those, in of themselves, were enough to actually drive me towards depression, which in turn led toward possibly sliding into a suicidal situation. May have helped add on to what I was feeling. But I didn't get a speeding ticket and go, oh God, I'm so depressed now I think I'll kill myself. Or, it doesn't work that way. Depression is an insidious thing. It's basically your brain working against you to bring you down. We know depression is caused by chemical imbalances within the brain, within the body. And it's working to help change your mindset to one of seeing nothing but bleakness and hopelessness wherever you turn. And it wears you down after a while. I mean, I know people who have cut off all contact with friends due to depression. I've done it. I mean, I've been in situations where when I was a kid and I was suffering from depression, I wouldn't come out of my room. There was a period where 2 summers in a row, I never came out of my room. I never left the house. Only if my parents were taking me somewhere and I'd leave my room to go eat and go to the bathroom. But the rest of the time, I stayed in my room and I read and I listened to music and I slept, which is another coping mechanism for people who have depression because they have no energy, so they sleep a lot. And of course, that got me labeled by my grandparents as just being, flat out lazy, because that's the way I was. I didn't want to come out. I was just flat out lazy. Depression doesn't always lead to suicide, but it can. And suicide is something when you get to that point in your life where you decide that it's time to check out, that you are no longer making a viable contribution to the planet, that you are no longer worthy of being around those who you know, where you just begin to feel as if I'm consuming too much oxygen. It could be used for better things. It's time to go. It takes time to build up. It really does. In the case of men who have survived attempts and talked about it later, they said a lot of their feelings leading up to their attempt had to do with feelings of self-worth, that they just were embarrassed or upset with how they were. You know, they had no self-value, is apparently what came out of that. And they decided they just had to go. With women, the understanding is just way too much pain builds up. And you get to the point where you can't take it anymore. That the amount of pain you're feeling on a daily basis is just too debilitating. I've been through both of those. I have. That's the bitch about it. And one of the things that I was told when I went on HRT, my doctor, you know, she has to give me the pros and cons, and she says one of the cons of depression, or one of the cons of estrogen, is it worsens depression. You know, naturally speaking, women suffer from depression even more so than men, and a lot of it is because of our chemical makeup. So if you're already suffering from depression and you start to transition, there is the likelihood that you're going to worsen your depression and possibly even have it drive you to suicide. Thanks. Thanks, chemicals in my body. Yeah, we're going to make you a woman, but in like 5 years, you're going to be so depressed, you're not going to like it. I really don't know what to do about shamers. I do know that from my own experiences, I can say that whatever is going on in your head at the moment that drives you to that point has nothing to do with having a bad day. My last attempt, and I may or may not have mentioned this before. I believe I've mentioned it on Facebook. I believe I may have mentioned it on the blog in passing once or twice. But my last attempt was back in late November of 2015. So about a year and a half ago. I had been out at work. I was out of work, you know, happy, joy. And one of the reasons I came out at work was because depression was starting to grow due to the fact that I was at that time living two lives. So I was out of work. I had changed my name earlier in the month of November. So that was all fine and dandy. That was all great. But I went, after work, I went to a place. I walked down to a nearby place to have dinner and a drink. And it was a place that I used to go to with another person who I had developed something of a budding friendship with, and then eventually kind of developed a crush upon them, which is a stupid thing to do, but that's just how I'm wired, you know. And for some reason, that just kept building up inside of me. That, you know, we used to come here, we used to hang out. This was the last place we went to before we stopped speaking to one another. The reasons for why that happened, well, kind of stupid, but it happened. And then I started kind of hitting the booze a little too hard. Normally when I go out to dinner like that, I'll hold myself to a couple of drinks. I think I had like 4 beers, and I was picking the beers that had the highest amount of alcohol in them. So by the time I left that place, I was pretty much on the verge of a crying jag. And once the tears hit, I was actually wandering around downtown Harrisburg for about 90 minutes just crying. I mean, literally walking the streets of Harrisburg crying. Went up and sat by the Capitol for a while, and all the while berating myself for being a stupid, silly person who just for whom I felt life was never going to get any better. This is kind of how it works in your head. You just start piling up all the indignities daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. This should have been the time that was like the most happiest for me. It was right after Thanksgiving, and I did not go home. That November in 15 was the last time I saw my family for a year and a half, and well, that's not going too well now, is it? So I finally reached the point where I decided I was going to go jump off the Walnut Street Bridge. We have a bridge here in Harrisburg. Wow, we have a lot of bridges. But we have a particular bridge here in Harrisburg that is it's basically a wrought iron bridge that was at one time was a toll road. It was a toll bridge, if you can believe this. It was a 2-lane toll bridge. They called it Old Shaky because it had a wrought iron roadway, and your car would go back and forth like this. And it was damaged during, I think it was Tropical Storm Agnes in 87. Or was it 82? I don't remember, or maybe it was in the late 70s. Anyway, the date's not important. What is important is the Susquehanna River rose so high that the roadbed of the bridge was like 3 feet underwater. And it damaged the structure, and they just said, well, we can't use it for driving on anymore, so they turned it into a footbridge. And you could at one time actually walk from the east shore to the west shore and back. And then several spans came down in an ice storm. I believe that was in 87. So you can walk back and forth between the east shore here in Harrisburg and City Island, and it's not too far from me. So I went out on the bridge probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. It was cold. It had been cold in Harrisburg for a few weeks. I'm sure the Susquehanna was cold because we had gotten a cold snap come through early. My way of reasoning was that, you'd fall into the rivers and hypothermia was going to set in rather quickly, especially if you're all soaked down and you're already cold. And I was already cold because, like I said, I'd been walking around in cold temperatures now for almost 2 hours, and I was just going to leave my purse with my ID on the bridge, and that's it. I was just going to go. And I decided at the last moment that since I have a hotline in my contacts list for suicides, I'd give them a call. It was something that I had actually promised my therapist, Michelle. She said, if you ever get to the point where you feel like you're going to go, please call a hotline. So I decided, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that this one time. I'll see what happens. If they can talk me down, fine, they'll talk me down. I'll have a good cry and I'll go home. If they can't, that's it. I'm just going to go. I called them, and they put me on hold. You can see I'm laughing now. And actually, the moment they said, all of our available counselors are busy, please hold, your call is important to us, like, you know, any other sort of canned customer service comments, I flash back to a movie that had been made in the late 70s with Burt Reynolds. It was called The End. And it was about a guy who discovers, you know, while he's still relatively young, like in his late 30s, early 40s, that he has a terminal disease and he's going to die like in a year. It was one of those terminal disease movies, you know. We had a lot of those back then. But they had a scene in there where after he gets the news, he just can't take it anymore. So he swallows a bunch of barbiturates and starts drinking vodka, you know, straight out of the bottle, and then realizes, no, I don't want to do this. So he calls the suicide hotline. And they're like, suicide hotline, and he starts going, yeah, I just took a bunch of pills and I'm drinking vodka. And they go, all our available operators are busy at the moment. Please stand by. And when I saw this, I started laughing at that time because I was like, no, you'd never get put on hold for something like that. And when it happened to me, I just flashed back on that moment. I mean, I instantly flashed back on laughing at the fact that, you know, somebody in a movie got put on hold on a suicide hotline, and it happened to me. So I just kind of like sat down on the bridge. I sat down and just laughed for about 5 minutes straight, which is how quickly things can change. I was laughing at the absurdity that when I needed somebody the most, I couldn't get through to them. You know, I was put on hold. And I just tossed my phone back in my purse and I said, it's not time. It definitely is not time. And that's an expression I've used before. My friend, the real Annie, Tanya, when we were first conversing way back in 2011, I told her about all the auto accidents I'd been in when I was a teenager. You know, I had been in a car where a guy was going too fast. He was trying to negotiate a 90-degree turn and ended up only making 45 degrees of it, and we ended up way out in the field. I was in a car that actually rolled once while we were racing. I was in a car that took out the front end of an old, built into the side of a hill garage, and I was almost killed in that wreck. I could have been. I would have been killed in that wreck, I think, if I had actually been wearing my seatbelt. It's a long story, but it's true. I was once hit by a drunk driver, a girl who was just lit to the extreme, at 2:30 in the morning on a highway where we were like the only cars within 2 or 3 miles of us. It was, how the hell does this happen? And it was only a matter of microseconds that resulted in her hitting my car like 3 feet behind where I was sitting rather than where I was sitting. And when I told Tanya about all this stuff, I said, you know, I've missed out on being killed so many times. And she said, the reason you haven't died is because you still have things to do. She also told me once before that she's always right. Gee, are there any young Bulgarian witches we know who have made similar statements. You should always listen to me, Carrie. I'm always right. Yeah, there's a lot of Tanya in Annie. A lot. It comes that quickly. When you get to that point in your life, you're not at rock bottom, you're below rock bottom. You do not see any ways out. And you may say, well, that was a really stupid reason. Why would you kill yourself over something like someone you had a crush on? It's not just that. It's a culmination of decades of feelings and remorse and failures. That's all you see. That's all you feel. That's all that's there for you to grasp onto. It's not about the feeling at the moment. It's your mind telling you this is just one more fuck up in what has become your life. Have another drink. That's one of the reasons why when I wrote my blog post about why I joined roller derby, I made the comment, my life has been defined by a series of failures, and I need something by which to succeed. Most people think about all their successes. When you suffer from depression, all you tend to look at are your failures. It weighs against you. Nobody looks at their successes because they don't look like successes to us. And that final comment that people make, oh, they're so selfish. They're not thinking about what they're leaving behind. They're gone. They don't see the damage that they've caused. Bullshit. We are totally thinking about others. We are. It's just that at that point, at that moment, what you're thinking is they would be better off without me in their lives. I love my daughter greatly. But there are times when I do feel that she'd just be better off not having me in her life. And that is a terrible feeling to have. And just fuck anyone who honestly believes that we don't give a shit about what happens those we leave behind. If you die in an accident, if you die due to someone's negligence or your own negligence or any combinations of things, you're not in your last thought thinking, wow, this is really going to fuck up all those people I'm leaving behind. No, you're gone. I think people who don't understand what we're going through feel this way because they look at it as if we're someone with a lingering illness, and people with a lingering illness can take steps to protect those who are left behind. But they kind of look at it like, well, you know, you guys just killed yourself, you're assholes, you don't care about anybody. We care. We care about a lot of people. One person we don't care about is us. That's really what it comes down to. We don't want others to be a part of our lives anymore. It hurts. It's hard. And it is ultimately heartless for others who don't understand what we go through to say, we don't care. We do. But this is not something you just shake off. Fuck it. Suck it up, Buttercup. You'll get better. Life gets better. Yeah, sometimes life does get better. That doesn't make the depression go away. That's what you don't understand. It doesn't make it go away. It takes treatment. It takes counseling. Sometimes it takes drugs. Just simply going out for a walk in the woods. I'll be quite honest, I have been in situations where I've had a great day, a fantastic day. I'll even say at some point, this has really been a good day. And maybe that night, or the next morning, or the next afternoon, I'll be like, you know what? Yesterday was such a great day. Maybe that's a good time to end it. Maybe I need to go out on a high point. Because maybe I'm never going to have another good day in my life. Until you've actually been in that situation, you cannot ever understand that level of despair when a simple day, a simple great day can make you go, maybe now's a good time to stop, because it's never going to get any better than that. We need to stop demonizing and shaming. We need to stop demonizing mental illness as something that needs to be not discussed, and we just sweep it under the carpet and leave it at that. And we need to stop shaming people who suffer from mental illness. I'm upfront about my mental illness. I don't give a shit who knows about it. and I'm upfront about the struggles that I've went through. I don't know if anything I say or do can ever help anyone else. I just don't know. You're never gonna know. What it really needs to do, I hope, is affect those people who aren't like us and who won't shame us, who won't demonize us, and who will help fight to see to it that things are done to make it so that we have access to treatment. That's the biggest problem with mental illness in this life. It's so hard to get treatment. And it always has been. This whole country has had this attitude of, you're weak if you suffer from depression. You're weak if you kill yourself. It's all about weakness. It's not. As my counselor, Michelle, my gender counselor, told me, she said, do you understand how strong one has to be to spend 50 years suffering through depression and suicidal ideation? I can't even say the word now. Ideation, suicidal ideation, and gender identity disorder, and still be alive at the end to try to do something about it. Do you understand just how strong you have to be to get through life on a day-to-day basis for 5 freaking decades? And still at the end go, I'm ready to go on. Yeah. She said, you're stronger than you think. You're stronger than you'll ever know. Tanya told me that too. She says, you don't see it because you're too close to the problem, but the people on the outside who see you, they know. They can see it. So I really apologize for bringing you down today, but I felt this was something I needed to say because it's been bothering me all week. Well, it's been bothering me ever since I heard the news. But it particularly bothers me that I have friends who would actually think that way. What doesn't bother me is I know I also have friends who don't think that way, who are there to help others, who want to help others, who want to see some things changed. I know I have lots of friends like that, probably more, far more, who outweigh those who don't feel it should be that way, who think you should just suck it up and deal. They don't understand. Sometimes taking that last final step, that is our way of dealing with it. That's how we deal. By dealing ourselves out. I promise next week it'll be all riding and roller derby. I'll try. I won't bring you down next Saturday. I'll have something nice to talk about. Thank you for listening. So take care. Have a good day. You notice I'm looking down. I'll see you around. Bye.